How mad would you be if you bought an expensive brand new pickup truck and instead of following the manufacturer's suggestion of 10,000 miles between oil changes, you decide to be better and change the oil every 6,000 to 7,000 miles. And then after 4 years and 110,000 miles, your engine still blows up. Well, I'd be a little hot, to say the least. This is the 2.7 liter EcoBoost out of a 2022 F-150 with a mere 110,000 miles on it, and there are holes in it. Now, I did a Carfax on this engine, and I've seen a lot of Carfaxes, and this is probably one of the best ones I've ever seen. This is from a one-owner truck. It is still on the road. It has oil changes done at the dealer every 6,000 to 7,000 miles. It doesn't really happen that often, and here's the engine from it, blown up on my stand. Now, I don't know why it blew up. It could have been something completely unrelated to maintenance. We don't know that yet. We don't know. I don't want to jump to conclusions. That mat has not ever been made. But it doesn't look good. I've been accused of hating pretty much every brand I've ever done a teardown on, and it's just not true. It's more of a modern car thing. But there are some good modern engines, and even though this one is blown up, I still think the 2.7 liter EcoBoost is a pretty good engine. This makes 325 horsepower, 400 pound-feet of torque. I've driven these trucks. They drive great. They get really good fuel economy for what they are, and I get like no calls for these engines. Compared to the 5 liter and the 3.5 liter, which I get calls for on a regular basis, this seems to be pretty robust, which is why I was really surprised that I was able to find one with good maintenance history and new windows installed in the block. Being that this is a smaller displacement V6 EcoBoost, the holes are a little bit smaller. It's a little bitty guy there. I think there's also one that could have been caused from how the engine was handled after it was removed, but I will say there's not a lot of broken stuff on the outside. But I don't know what's behind this. This could be hiding some things. When you see an engine that has holes in it, my first inclination is to see if the engine still turns over. And that's exactly what we're going to do now. The bolt gets tighter, which is not a great thing. It also gets looser, but the engine is completely locked up. The first thing I'd like to do is pull the coils and the plugs. Oh no! Well, it's not good, guys. So this one, it's deleted. It's just gone. And I thought, okay, that's the cylinder that let go. And then I pulled this plug out, and I thought, this is going to be a little bit more than I expected. There's going to be a lot of Malice in the combustion palaces tonight. This one is pretty interesting too, or maybe it was this one. There is a little chunk of engine on the spark plug, which, by the way, all of these are super wet and fouled looking. I think this thing had a really bad time at the end. The very next step is to remove the EGR cooler and EGR valve. I'm going to try to remove it all as a unit. I don't know if that's going to work, but we're going to try. Is it looser-ish? I feel like I'm missing some bolts here. Is there anything else holding this? Oh, you know what? Since this has coolant going through it, I bet it's O-ringed in here. Let's get blue. Get out of your home. All right, I think I'm gonna have to unbolt that from the side of the engine. We're still not off. I bet you're supposed to take this apart more, so that's exactly what we're not going to do. And it doesn't look too cruddy. Next, we'll pull the upper intake plenum. Now, there's not going to be a lot to see from this vantage point because the intake ports are part of the valve covers. It's just the design of all the 2.7s. I don't know that we're going to get a great look down the intake ports, but I'll try once the valve covers are off. One thing I do really like about the second generation of 2.7 Ecoboost is that they are both port and direct injected. So hopefully these engines don't have the carbon buildup that we see with just direct injection. Next, we'll get started on the left-hand valve cover. We'll start with the engine bracket, the dipstick. Oh, hopefully it's actually empty. We'll have to verify that. I think the hole in the pan tells me that it's empty, but the stick had some oil in it. Let's go ahead and get all the valve cover bolts unbolted. Now I can't remember if I need to take anything else apart, so I'm just going to start prying on things because I don't know what I'm doing here. Right now I think it's just stuck on the spark plug tube seals. That sounds pretty. Hey, that's pretty clean in there. So there's a lot of good things here. Number one, there's barely any varnish. This is super clean. For over 100,000 miles, this looks really good. The maintenance history matches the way this looks. The chain is still present, and it's taut. All of the rocker arms are in their proper location. I know that's like a low bar to climb over, but we've seen some pretty screwed up engines on this channel. The only thing that really stands out from this vantage point is that there's a little bit of metal transfer on that cam lobe. The rest of this looks really nice. Time to rinse and repeat for the right-hand bank. This side has a tinge more of varnish, but it's not bad. Not at all. All the cam lobes look good. Chain is present. Same thing applies. Just a little bit of transfer. It's almost identical to the other side. Well, I tried. I tried to look down the intake ports. You can kind of look down them. You can't really see the valves. You can see where the direct or the port injector sprays because it's clean. So apparently it doesn't do a super great job at keeping the deposits from building up. That might be some metal chunks in there. Sorry guys, I don't have a bore scope at the house. I guess I should get one. The next thing on the agenda is to remove the turbochargers and inspect. All right, all we've got are two nuts and a bolt that is blocked by a stud on the exhaust housing. This one, we're just gonna find some other way. Oh, this sure is a long bolt. So as I pulled the turbo off, I noticed how obscenely wet this is. And then I looked inside and I saw some fragments of abnormal engine operation, which begs the question, if the head looks like this, what does the inlet of the exhaust housing look like? Oh, engine gravel. That does not go there. How does this turbo spin? Or does this turbo spin? Ooh, it's kind of grindy feeling. Can you hear that? Let's just keep going. It's probably bad for it. So I don't think the turbo per se failed, but I think it's bad now, just based on the amount of junk that has passed through this thing. Before I flip the engine on the other side, I want to know if there's any damage hiding behind this engine mount bracket. It's perfect! Onto the left-hand bank. This turbo looks much more normal. It spins nice. There's no debris inside. That looks perfectly fine. Next, we're going to get the oil filter out. We're going to use my Vintage Craftsman ratchet. I bring it out on occasion just to make sure it still works. Oh no. Oh no. Well, the first oh no was, look at all the trash in the oil filter housing. That is not great. So you can imagine what the filter looks like. And the filter, the pleats are just loaded with metal. Not good. Next, we're going to work on removing everything off the front timing cover. We'll start with the oil cooler. Yeah, that's trash too. Anything that oil went through, junk. Now the water pump. I think all those bolts are out. Gotta be careful here. I think there's an O-ring or yeah, there's an O-ring in here. Here's the water pump. It actually looks pretty good. It's an original pump, stamped 21. It's 22 model year, that checks out. There's no signs of anything weeping. For a factory pump, this is in great shape. You probably want to hang on to something like this. This looks like a safe spot. Next is to get that crank pulley removed. Let's see if my little guy can do it here. No problem. Next it's time to take a few bolts out of the timing cover. Well, I sure hope I got all the bolts out, but we're going to pry anyway. I didn't see any jacking bolts on this one. Some of the Ford V6s have them. Give it some taps. All right, this side's loose. There we go. This took a little effort there. Well, there's the inside of the timing cover. That all looks okay until you look at the oil pan. Well, most of this looks pretty good. Now, there is something that I've shown in videos in the past that a lot of people don't like, and that is the belt. It's a Kevlar belt, and I can say from this vantage point, this doesn't look like it's the root cause of whatever this failure is. However, when you look in the pan, there's quite a bit of engine shrapnel in here. And I saw this thing right here. I think that's just part of the plastic casting. It's not the gasket that's right here for the oil pump. This is probably just part of the plastic casting, but we'll pick at that once the pan is off. Let's go ahead and strip the timing system. I will say one thing I really don't like about the belt, besides the fact that it's there, is the fact that it's sandwiched between the two banks worth of timing. And I know they do that for packaging reasons, but they consider the belt a maintenance item and the chains not. And if you have to take the chains off to do the belt, then everything becomes a maintenance item. At least that's the way I look at it. So let's go ahead and get the rails off and the chains off. That's under a lot of tension. That's fine. Remove this chain.
Decent.
Try to get this one off as well. At least this one will dangle. So taking a look at the timing guides, and there's little pieces of metal all over them. There's no actual damage to the guides themselves. Those look pretty good. I would say there's a little bit of wear on that one, but I've done a couple of these engines now, and these are not too terrible. Time to work on the caboose of the engine. We're going to remove this large steel bracket. It's actually not a bracket as much as crash protection so that you don't puncture the fuel system in a wreck. Oh, we're leaking fuel. There's our high pressure fuel pump. That looks pretty decent. Next, we'll pull the lifter out. There's definitely some transfer on that thing. It rolls okay, but the transfer is kind of concerning. Let's go ahead and pull this housing off. And there's the cam lobe that drives the high pressure fuel pump. Some more cleanup in the back. Next, we're going to pull the variable cam timing solenoids out and check for metal debris. To my surprise, there really isn't a bunch of debris. Maybe a little bit here. No, not really. A lot of times these will catch any metal suspended in the oil. And either these didn't catch it or there wasn't any in this area. Now it is time to cram the cam cramps loose so that we can pull the cramshafts. Taking a look at the journals, and they don't really look too torn up. They look pretty good. I did notice that a couple of the rollers here have some metal debris on them. So there's clearly been some bad stuff circulating through this engine. And the camshafts, they look pretty good. I don't see a ton of damage or wear. The caps usually see more damage, and I don't really see anything notable. These things look pretty good. I really expected them to be worse considering what we've seen in the oil filter so far. But they're really not bad. Time to crack the head bolts loose. We just got to break the seal here. I kind of remember these being, oh, maybe not. That was some work. Well, head gasket looks pretty decent. I don't see any issues with it. And at first glance, this doesn't look too terrible. Let's get a better look. So first look at the pistons and bores. And I don't see anything too terrible. I don't see any cracks. There's a few marks right there at the crown of that piston, but I mean, there's just a ton of debris on this one though. Let's go look at that cylinder head. This is the back of the head. We're starting at the back. I know. There's definitely some debris embedded in the surface of the head. It's not as bad as you'd expect considering what the plugs look like, but like there's a good piece. Here, let's do this. There's a chunk right there. And then the middle cylinder, there's some damage right there. Uh-oh. That's not good. What happened there is an exhaust valve that is, it looks like it's burned a little bit. Or maybe it's just broken. Could that be the root cause here? I don't know. It is time for some science. A perfect score. Onto the right-hand bank. Let's go ahead and cram these cam cramps loose. This side is pretty similar. Now a couple of the roller rockers have some metal transfer, like right there. A little bit right there, you can see that rocker. A little bit of transfer. More in this area. They still spin okay. The journals look pretty good. The camshafts and cam caps look pretty okay. There's a little bit of scoring there, like some debris went through there. A little bit more damage than the other side. I think one of these, yeah, that one right there. Looks like something went through that. Maybe that as well. It doesn't look like they were run dry. The camshaft looks okay. Let's go ahead and pull that head off. Let's crack these head bolts loose. Now the reason these heads don't like to come off as soon as you get the head bolts out is they have very long dowel pins. So we're going to go ahead and just kind of give this one a little bit of a head start here. Oh, I'm caught on something. Oh, there's some bad stuff going on here. What am I caught on? Besides a whole bunch of coolant. It was just tangled up in the knock sensor harness. Here's the head gasket. It is probably the best piece that you can look at from this vantage point. It's perfect. Perfect cannot describe anything else that I can see right now. Oh, wow. I have not seen a 2.7 this bad, ever. We'll start at the back. It's going to be okay. There is quite a bit of material from other parts of the engine that shouldn't be in here. Cylinder wall looks okay. Let's go to the middle cylinder. It's all the way up so we can't see much. But the outside of the crown is suspiciously clean, as if it has made contact with the cylinder head. There's even an arrow on the piston pointing to the missing piston. This is just gone. And it looks like the bottom of the bore is gone. The big end is still on the crankshaft. But there's not a whole lot of nice things I can say about this currently. This was a catastrophe. A crankcase catastrophe. And if you think the block was the worst part, you would be wrong. This is the best cylinder, and there's a lot of damage by that side of the combustion chamber. This one, it has impact marks all along the top here, but that's fine. It's fine compared to this one, which is completely missing an exhaust valve. The rest of the valves are shot peened. The seat is gone. Where that went, we may never know. That's the intake seat that's gone. You can see the valve has been smashed over. I'm sure it's got guide damage. Wow. This is one of the worst looking heads we've seen in a long time. Let's do a science test for the right bank. I don't think it's going to pass. That's not good. Now it is time to pull the plastic oil pan off of this engine. And normally, when there's not an explosion on the inside, I would turn it upside down to do that. But since I'm sure that there are some engine parts that are no longer attached, and I don't want them to rain onto the floor, I'm going to rotate this at kind of an angle here. We'll get the bolts out. Oh, we're leaking a bunch of coolant. No problem. I'm going to get the bolts out, and then I'll pull the pan with it facing down. Oh, I just heard a whole bunch of stuff fall into the pan. I know there's more bolts. Okay. All right, I'm just gonna pour this out. Yeah, I got most of the important pieces out. There is a lot of stuff to unpack here. For starters, just so you're wondering, here is the wrist pin. There is an impact mark on it. I can't wipe it off. The real question is, does it matter? Can I reinstall this? Probably so. The rest of this, here's a section of rod. That is filleted. There's a ring. There's part of the oil ring. A lot of this is part of what you could call the upper engine block, or upper engine oil pan, or lower engine block. Here's the small end of the rod. Bushing is gone. This saw some things. There's piston squirter. Most of this is piston and aluminum block, that upper pan I talked about. There's another ring there. And then you get to the oil pan. or should I call it the party platter, because some things went down in here, and there's a lot of debris everywhere. There's a ring. There's a ring. I don't think you should pick up the phone. Inside the pickup, it's everywhere. That is definitely something cast into the pan. I wouldn't worry about that. And the one thing I don't see is a lot of copper here, like a bearing came apart. This doesn't look quite like that yet, although I did find some suspicious material here. What is this? Is this plastic? It looks kind of like a folded up bearing. That is connecting rod. It's almost unrecognizable. Now we're going to roll this over and see what the bottom looks like. It might rain some things. It's going to be fine. I have plenty of pig mat to clean up this mess, so it's not a huge deal. Is it bad? Oh yeah. It's not good. Well, this is pretty bad. Did you expect it to be good? Because I didn't. I don't know what that is down there. That looks like a chunk of piston. Maybe a medium-sized piston nugget. Lots of damage to this area of this upper oil pan. And then there's some pieces over here. And one other thing I didn't notice before until the engine was upside down is look at that. Would you look at the crack on that? That took a hit or two. It'll be pretty interesting to see how the rest of this comes apart. Now it is time to remove the oil pump and the belt, which we'll take a look at. There's the belt, and now we can get the chain. The magnificent chain. The oil pump next. Well, let's see if this thing has some damage. Somehow, I don't see any impact marks. So let's go ahead and tear it apart. It is a vane style pump. The oil is very sparkly. Get this cleaned up so we can take a look and then check out that belt. So let's look at this oil pump first. There's a little bit of wear there, but that's not the concerning part. The concerning part is actually that wear there. Some large chunks must have gotten in here. That's the only real damage I saw. These don't look too bad. I would say that's average wear. I don't see anything out of the normal except for the damage to that part of the oil pump. And we're going to look at this oil pump belt. I know a lot of you don't like this. I am a lot of you. I'm not a fan of this. However, we have torn down a lot of belt engines, oil pump or rubber wet belts, Kevlar, whatever you want to call them. We've torn down a lot of EcoBoost engines and even a couple of GM engines with one of these. And we have yet to see one that has failed outside of the 1 liter EcoBoost, which was a tensioner problem. The problem isn't so much the belts failing. At 110,000 miles, all the teeth are intact, but there are a lot of cracks on the outside. The problem really is the fibers and the things that come loose from this as it wears go through the oiling system because it is a wet belt. This one at 110K doesn't look like it's destroyed, but there are cracks present. Time to unbolt the upper oil pan, lower block, girdle, whatever you want to call it. It's time to get it unbolted. Sure how tight these will be? Not. Now I do have one of the engine stand bolts mounted to this piece, which I'm going to have to get off next. It's going to be fine. There's still 3 more. They leave you really nice places to pry. do have to pry the rear main seal plate off. This is a one-time use component here, just like the oil pan. So we don't really have to be too careful with it. All right, that is no longer attached to anything. Appears to be stuck on this corner here. Little sealant. Well, no wonder this engine wouldn't rotate. Somebody put some piston nuggets in the way. There's another one. And some more pieces. Now, some of this could have been displaced when the engine was moved and after it was removed from the vehicle. But yeah, that's not so great. I think there's a ring hanging out down there. That probably fell in when I rotated the engine over. The upper pan is almost sawed all the way through there. This is the side that put a hole in it. One rod did all that damage. We need to fish these piston nuggets out of here. Now I wonder, what I probably should do before I try to fish that out is get these two rod cap bolts out, because it's going to be really hard to do with this thing being so mobile. If this rotates, it's bad enough, but if the whole crank does, even harder. We're just going to get these loose for now. Thankfully, the bolt heads aren't too deformed. Perfect. That's in there, guys. I'm not even shaking it. The other side is a little freer. Let's see if we can work on that. This too is in the way, but it moves a little bit, which makes it less bad. You know what? I think it's going to be best if we simply unbolt everything, because I believe I can get access to all of this stuff since the block is designed this way. And I think we can leave the rods and pistons in place, pull the crank, and then I'll have much more access. That is one with the block current or crank right now. Keep these in order. So
that the rebuilder, nah, I'm just joking.
Another interesting thing about this engine is that it has fractured main caps, which is pretty uncommon. Let's go ahead and crack these loose. So I gotta be careful here. I'm gonna push, I can't push the rods down. I can't lift the crank out. If I put some force, the nose of the crank moves a little. Ah, yes. Let's go ahead and pull the crank. Now we can just pick it out of there. I don't know if I can get this one out. We're getting there. There's a nice healthy piston nugget, and there's a section of connecting rod. I don't know how hard it's going to be to get these pushed out of the boards, but we're going to find out. Let's see, can we get this out? Oh, it does move. I don't know if it's going to come all the way out though. There we are. That was good. And I broke it. Let's get into it because there is a lot here. So first, I believe this is all the engine block and this is all piston, and there's probably some piston parts over here. It's fine. This piston was completely annihilated. Lots of impact marks. These are the only real recognizable sections of the piston. They are bad. Little end of the rod, lots of impact marks. The rod is all here. This is off the crank. This part actually fared pretty well. There's not too many impact marks on it, but the bearings look great. A little bit of damage there, probably happened at the end. The rest of the rod bearings are superb. Like, this is the nicest set of rod bearings we've seen in an engine this exploded in a long time. Now let's look at the rest of the rods and pistons. There's some damage. Obviously, there's a lot of damage. That one's broken. But I don't see any terrible things going on here. There's not a lot of skirt wear. Most of this happened from the final catastrophe of this engine. There's definitely some pock marks on the top from embedded metal as this thing exploded because I'm sure it threw shrapnel throughout. The oil rings, while they don't look great, they're not completely plugged up, which is good to see. I didn't see any cracks in the ring lands. I didn't see any issues with rings. Outside of a little bit of dirt in the oil ring, it wasn't really too bad. On to the main bearings. Well, these saw a little bit of force at the very end, but they are also in really good condition. Just a little bit of wear right there. That's closest to the impact. Here is the crankshaft. All of the journals look really nice, as you'd expect from a nice set of looking bearings. Lots of impact marks. This crank did some work jamming parts that got in its way into places they shouldn't stay. Make things out of clay by the bay we just may. Block is absolutely wrecked. Look at that's the direction or the angle of the normal piston squirter bolt, and look how deformed that is. Lots of damage in this arena. This area survived pretty well, all things considered. Let's look at the bores. I would call this below average wear for the miles, especially considering this makes so much power for its displacement. This one, obviously, this is the one that came apart, so you're going to see a lot more damage pretty much throughout. This thing waged a war. There's some vertical wear from debris as this thing exploded, but nothing alarming outside of where it exploded. But we are not done. There is a lot to uncover here. So I popped all of the exhaust valves out of this engine because we saw one of them. This is the head that had one slightly damaged valve, and it's not really slightly damaged. That's burnt. That's not from a chip of debris coming through. That's from burning a valve from either a fuel or timing related issue or burning oil, which I didn't really see too many other signs of that, but wow. Now, if you think that's bad, let's look at the seat here. Let me go get my flashlight. That is terrible. It charred through the seat. Looks like through the back side of the seat. It almost cut that thing in half, but its neighbor looks fine. And there's the neighbor valve. Now, keep in mind, this is on the head that didn't see the catastrophic failure. We're getting to that next. So here is the head that saw the big failure. There's an intake valve. It's got one of those 4-angle valve jobs. There's another one. That one's bent a lot less. Here is the surviving exhaust valve. And I actually found this in the rubble from the oil pan. That, my friends, is all that remains of the exhaust valve. Oh, it's gone. I believe this is all that's left. Now there could be another section of this gone. It's amazing how peened this valve is. I couldn't place this anywhere on the rod or piston. This is not part of the connecting rod. This is, or was, a valve. Also, magnets don't stick to it. Here's the damage to that combustion chamber. It is severe, to say the least. Looks like it deleted one of the seats. Or maybe, no, it's still, parts of it are gone. Parts of it right there. Looks like that one broke off from all that. That's what started this chain reaction, maybe. There are a few things I'd like to get out of the way. This was not an oiling related failure as such. This was an oil starvation. The bearings were beautiful. The cam journals were great. While there was a ton of debris in the oil filter, this thing blew up when it was full of oil. And if it's full of oil and stuff gets into the oil, like aluminum, which is lightweight, it will get sucked into the filter and be distributed if it makes it through those parts. And we saw that. The filter was packed, relatively packed full of metal. The interesting thing here too is that there is an open recall for some Fords with the 2.7 and 3.0 Ecoboost for brittle intake valves. That's not what happened here. In fact, I entered the VIN from this truck into the Ford recall checker, said that we need such a thing, and it has no open recalls. Also, the exhaust valves were damaged, not the intake valves, so that's unrelated. This probably was a detonation, poor fueling related failure. What's odd to me though is that the cylinder that torched the valve was relatively intact, and the one that we can't really tell if it torched the valve because the valves were so rough, that was not intact. There's nothing you can say about the word intact that would describe the way that cylinder looked. It was annihilated. Now it could have been maybe somebody got some bad gas. Maybe it was a weak high pressure fuel pump. Maybe it was a leaking injector. However, I would tend to think that the cause of this issue, since it was on both banks, at least we know that there was a burn valve on one bank and destruction on the other, we can assume perhaps that maybe an exhaust valve came apart because it cut the valve in half, and then all hell broke loose when the head of the valve fell off and it blew up. I don't know how you drive through all of that. It takes time for this to happen. I think it was probably under a high load situation. Obviously it was turning some RPM because it didn't just like break a little bit and lock up. This exploded. This is the worst 2.7 I've seen ever. This is the most catastrophic failed 2.7 Ecoboost. And maybe we'll call this an anomaly. Maybe there was a faulty part here. All I know is at 110,000 miles, if I took the care that this vehicle got, I mean, when you look through the Carfax, it had rust proofing done every couple years. It was at the Ford dealer for every single service, and it blew up at 110K. I'd be so mad. I'd be so mad. And the other interesting thing is that Ford did not cover this failure. Now, obviously, 110K is probably outside of the warranty on this vehicle. So why would they cover it? Unless it was some faulty problem with themselves. So I'm not sure what the root cause was, but I have my suspicions it was related to bad gas, a fueling related issue, and it created a problem where it could torch valves and it cut one in half, probably towing a trailer, something along those lines. I'd still be pretty pissed. Anyway, this was pretty interesting to see. I got a timing cover to sell, and that's it. That's the only thing from this engine that I trust to go back onto another vehicle. If you'd like to buy any parts out of this for your desk or a display piece or souvenir or whatever, I'll leave our email in the video description. I really hope you enjoyed this teardown. As always, I love all the comments, all the feedback, and even the criticism. I love it all, and I'll catch you on the next one. Well, guys, the water pump failed the test. They just don't make them like they used to.